What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations, 2020 Best Podcast News Award winner, and 2018 Innovation Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. And I host the only live conversation in the world for dads and fathers that's sponsored by Dove Men Care and also sponsored by Dad Central, Canada's national fatherhood organization. And because of that collaboration, I've been able to reach out directly or indirectly to over 100,000 fathers in the year 2021. So very humbled about that. As always, I'd like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. And we're happy to have you here. You know that Dr. Vibe loves friends, but also loves new friends. And we have another new friend with us tonight. Let me give a little background about this wonderful lady. Toronto-based filmmaker Yasmine Mathurin's award-winner directorial debut is one of ours. Ms. Mathurin is a Haitian-born writer and director and an award-winning podcast producer. Yay, podcasts! In 2011, she was selected to take part in the United Nations Human Rights Fellowship Program for people of African descent. She was the youngest and only UN delegate from the fellowship to also receive a scholarship within the Organization Internationale de la Francophonie. This became the starting point for her to pursue her career in journalism and filmmaking. She produced the audio fiction podcast, The Shadows, which won gold in the fiction category at the 2019 Digital Publishing Award, and the CBC podcast, Tai Asks, which won a Webby People's Choice Award. She is a recipient of the 2019 Netflix-Banff Media Diverse Voices Fellowship and is an alumni of numerous film labs, including the Hot Docs Documentary Lab, the UnionDocs Feature Documentary Lab, and the DOC Breakthrough Program, and the Yale University's Thread Multimedia Storytelling Fellowship. She's got receipts, folks. She's got receipts. One of ours has racked up a whole slew of awards and accolades, beginning with its world premiere at Hot Docs, the largest documentary film festival in North America, including Special Jury Prize, Canadian Feature, Top 10 Audience Favorite, and recently On the Rise Award, sponsored by the IATSE 856 at the 2021 Gimli Film Fest. The film stars Josiah Wilson, who was adopted as a baby in Haiti and raised in an Indigenous family in Calgary, Canada. Years later, when Josiah is racially profiled at an Indigenous basketball tournament and refused the right to play a sport he deeply loves, his experience makes the news. The honest portrayal of complicated family dynamics interweaved with basketball boldly asks us to create space for nonlinear paths to self-acceptance while revealing the empowering experience of being accepted and loved by your community. Well, you know something? Let's bring Ms. Mathurin to the digital stage because, man, with that introduction, she needs a royal. Hello, Ms. Mathurin. How are you?
Hi. Thank you so much for having me. Really happy to be here.
I am happy to be here too. How you doing today?
I'm good. I'm feeling really good. I'm happy to meet you and to be on the show. Congrats. Also, just in reading about you and the show and your own accolades, it's really great. Yeah. Happy to be here.
Well, thank you. Thank you for taking the time. And when you're receiving so many awards, I must say I bow to you and say thank you for making the time. And congratulations on all the wonderful things you have doing. And I'm hoping during our conversation this evening, we'll get at least a highlight on some of them. Like I always do when I have new friends on the Dr. Vibe Show. Can you give a little background about yourself, where you grew up, life growing up, etc.?
Yeah, so I was born in Haiti. I spent my early childhood in Haiti, and our family did a lot of back and forth between Haiti and Canada growing up because of political instability. I grew up in Montreal and Calgary. I've been living in Toronto now for the past more than 12 years now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a bit of like a hyphenated Canadian, so I feel like I've lived all over. And I think a lot about my own story in terms of how it sort of bleeds into the work that I do. And I believe in impact, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it does. From what you've shared with me, one of the first words that comes to my head is cosmopolitan. You've lived in so many different cities. How has that shaped you into the person you are today?
I think it deeply has affected how I see the world. And I think, especially as a kid, when I did a lot of back and forth between Haiti and Canada, I think it really helped me see, what it looks like to have the means, and then you move to Canada, and then you see like, okay, like seeing how different people live, and seeing and understanding that, and also experiencing different worlds at a young age, I think also opened up my eyes in terms of, different kinds of inequalities that exist, and also opportunities that can exist in places that don't exist in others. And so it put a lot of things into perspective. And I think my own upbringing sort of grounded me in wanting to like do work for social change. I know that the fact that I moved around a lot, and at a young age definitely, you know, rooted me in wanting to do that. So,
Okay. Was the way you were raised and the way your family raised you, was social justice part of that upbringing? Was that an environment that you grew up within your own family?
um, yeah, I think so. I mean, I feel like I grew up in a Christian household, and I feel like, and also as a Haitian person, like knowing my history, and I feel like we always had conversations around inequality and justice and fairness, and sometimes, um you know I mean, yeah, like I think as Haitians, like we always, that's just something that is just, it's part of of our day to day. um and so, yeah, I would say that, yeah, like I feel like that was part of my everyday, with my family.
Good, good, good. Let me ask, how was life growing up in Haiti, and how challenging was the transition leaving Haiti to come to Canada?
uh Growing up in Haiti was great. I feel like I had great memories. I also had memories of, some like instability. Like I think that's kind of, I mean, no, that is the reason why my parents decided that we should move. Um, the transition between Haiti and Canada, I mean, it was a transition. I don't know if it was because I was fairly young, and I think because we would live like 1 year in Canada and then go back to Haiti, it almost felt like those were almost like teasers, warm-ups, and then once we moved there, then it was kind of like we already had a sense of things, but it was gradual. I would say my transition was pretty gradual. I think the bigger leap was when I moved to Calgary to learn when I was around like 12. And that was around there that I felt like was maybe the bigger change, is to go from a, you know French speaking, even if it was in Canada, it was like at least there was still the same language, which always made me feel like I could at least connect with people.
Sure.
And the leap from that to Calgary, that was maybe the more jarring part. um, uh, it was like, yeah, learning English and having to connect in English.
Yeah,
And as a
yeah.
young person, I think that was maybe the bigger leap. Um, yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I'll parking lot that, because what you just shared there, I think, makes me also think about Josiah. So we'll,
yeah.
we'll parking lot that there. But then I want to find out, when did you get the passion to do media? Where did that come from?
Um, I think for a long time, I always got the sense that um, there's power in story. Like I remember growing up in Haiti, we would get cable from the US, and so we would watch all these shows, and they were always like dubbed in French, but I didn't always know that it was dubbed in French. It was just what the TV showed us. And the TV kind of like, in my opinion, kind of, it felt like a bit of a portal into different worlds. And
Wow.
so and I feel like that's something that really affected me in a way that I guess I didn't realize it was affecting me until like I got older. Um, so to backtrack a bit, like I did, because I grew up sort of going back and forth between Haiti and Canada. I always had this passion for social justice. I felt like that's where I wanted to impact the world, is to find a way to help folks in Haiti, and so I went to school and I studied political science. I went to school um, for political science and nonprofit management, and I wanted to work for the UN. So my vision at that time was that I was gonna, do human rights work, and so I managed to get a fellowship with the United Nations. And
Congratulations.
thank you.
Yeah.
And that fellowship really changed a lot for me, because I think at that level I ended up, first it was just like, eye-opening to be in Switzerland and Geneva and to actually see what was happening at that level at 21. And it made me also, thank you. It also made me realize the disconnect, right, in terms of what was happening at the level, and also what I knew was happening at the ground level with my peers. And I remember when I did the fellowship, the UN hadn't set up their Twitter yet. They weren't on the internet. They were
Oh,
barely,
wow.
yeah, they had no
Wow.
social
Wow.
media. And I was
Wow.
and I was the youngest person in the program. And I was like, well, if you're trying to do this kind of work and you're not on those platforms, like, what am I even really doing here? And so I think it made me reflect deeper in terms of storytelling and my own personal scope of influence. Because the other folks that were part of that program were older, um, and and it was an amazing program. But I think that is a shift that happened to me in terms of realizing that, like, I don't have, like, social change doesn't have to look like it, like being a diplomat, for instance. It could look smaller. There's things that are within my reach that I think I can find my voice in doing. And so I came back to Canada and I just became obsessed with story. So I just I like I had a bit of money in my bank account. I bought a camera and I started teaching myself everything I could through YouTube.
Wow.
Um, and so that was sort of the journey of like going into storytelling.
And thank you, because it sounds like all you had was a camera and a dream.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much.
I can relate. Before we went on live, Yasmine says, "Well, how long you been doing this?" And I told her, and I said that when I started, all I had was a laptop, a microphone, and a dream.
Yeah.
That was it. So I can so relate. Well, reading some of your bio, some of the great, some of these great things, just in high level, I'd like you to just share about, like, gold in the fiction category at the 2019 Canadian Digital Publishing Award, CBC podcast, Tai Asks Why, winning a Webby People's Choice Award. Come on now. You got some good stuff going on.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah.
And like 2019 Netflix-Banff Media Diverse Voices Fellowship.
Mhm.
All these things, like, Film Labs, how has that made you, first of all, a better content creator? That's one part I want to get first. How are all these accolades, plus the hard work, how has it made you a better content creator?
I think for me, like, because I didn't go to film school, I think my strategy in understanding the world and the craft of filmmaking and story was to, like, almost kind of throw everything I can at the wall. So applying to a lot of labs and seeing if I can get in, and also just being deeply curious about not just the craft of writing, directing, and producing, but I feel like these spaces kind of were my teaching ground. So I think I'm still a student of storytelling,
Of
like,
course.
and so I think for me, my journey so far has been to try to better my craft by surrounding myself with people who are doing work that I love, or people who are better than me, so I can learn from them. And so I don't know if that quite answers the question,
No,
but
no, no, it does.
mhm,
It does. And I love one of the words you said there. And I really emphasize that when content creators say, like, what do I need to do? And I say, one of the things is being curious.
mhm.
A good content creator, in my opinion, always ABC, always be curious.
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe in the power of curiosity, and I've followed it in every way that I can. And I think it's kind of one of those things that is connected to my instincts.
Okay.
And so yeah, I feel like that's kind of, I've tried to like find ways to sort of silence the noise of like the internet and social media to kind of really sit with what it is that my curiosity is kind of being moved towards. And I try to honor that as much as I can through the work that I do. Um, and then I hope people like it, basically.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah.
that comes into play also. Well, let's transition and let's talk about this film, One of Ours. Where did the journey start?
Yeah, it started in Calgary. Funny enough, when I moved to Calgary, when I was roughly around 12, 13, I moved there with my twin sister and I lived with my aunt. And the rest of my siblings didn't move with me at the time. And so when I moved to Calgary, my aunt wanted us to get connected to the Haitian community, to sort of meet other kids. And so Josiah and Mariah, who are the some of the subjects in the film, they were part of the Haitian community. So they were friends with my aunt. And so they were introduced to me as like, hey,
Okay.
here are these kids. They're Haitian. Go play. And then that was kind of the extent of that. You know, Mariah, who's Josiah's sister, who's also in the film. We were part of a Haitian dance group in Calgary we would perform at like Independence Day dinners in Calgary for different communities. And so we did that for a few years. And so in being part of that dance group, they were part of our lives through seeing them at practices and stuff like that. Like I remember Josiah would come to practice and he would always be like basically this like really hyper but like sweet kid that would just be playing basketball in the background while we're all trying to just practice our dance routines. And so that's kind of our initial meeting is at that stage. And so fast forward a few years later, it was through Facebook because I kept in touch with everybody on Facebook. So when the news broke out around Josiah and the basketball tournament in BC, in some ways they were kind of reintroduced to me in a different way because I was reading those news headlines and it felt like it was just interesting like to me to just like to know somebody and then to kind of read a news report and the news report was kind of talking about these bigger issues around identity and very big political questions. But then I would read those headlines and also remember my own memory of Josiah, who's like the super sweet kid that just loves basketball. And so I think in being challenged by my own memory of him and also seeing these bigger questions aligned, I just felt like the kind of urgency to understand what was happening here. But also just like an actual genuine concern and care for how they were doing, because I feel like it's a big thing. He was 21 at the time as well. And so I think all of those things kind of were all the motivating factors for me to sort of reach out and see how I can kind of start the journey of making the film. And they were gracious enough to let me.
Yeah, so you knew Josiah.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, because I'm going, okay, like how did she get these shots and this content? I'm going like there's really good footage there, like video footage from many years ago. I go like either you developed a really good relationship or you had a really good relationship with Josiah and the family.
Yeah. So I definitely feel like because we knew each other, they knew my family, I knew theirs. I think that helped build the trust. And also in terms of the family videos and the archive, like all this stuff is, I can't even take credit for that, because that's entirely them documenting their lives and entrusting those family home videos and photos to me to help tell their story. And that's specifically, you know, I have to credit Liette, which is Josiah's mom, for being so diligent and thorough in just documenting their lives for all these years.
Well, isn't it interesting? You and I, content creators, and there's a family that documented their content.
Mm-hmm.
When you approached the family saying you wanted to do this project, what was their first response?
I approached Don first, which is Isaiah's dad, because he was the most active in terms of sharing the story. He was very open. He was open and willing, and Josiah wasn't. He was pretty guarded in the beginning of the journey. Rightfully so, because I think when the news broke out, there was a lot of reporters that wanted to talk to him, and it's a bit overwhelming. You know, it was overwhelming for him. And so for me to kind of pop out, you know, roughly around when that was happening, you know, he wasn't in a space to have that conversation. And so I just kept being persistent and I made sure to just communicate what I was thinking of doing and who I am and what I think is really important about what was happening. And I wanted to have that and I had that conversation with each member of the family. And eventually I think I ended up kind of being invited to one of their Christmas dinners. And so I ended up coming in and I was like, oh, I'll bring my camera. And so,
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of how we kind of started the project, is through that time. And some of that footage ended up in the film. But yeah, it took time. It took time before Josiah could like really warm up. And to be fair, when I showed up, I didn't expect him to be like, yeah, let me tell you all these things, because that's not how the Black men in my life are. And so my brothers aren't like that, and I'm not like that. You know. And so I wanted to earn that trust, and I knew that we needed to have the time to be able to build that relationship. And so thankfully, through the process of making the film, which took us about 4 years, like
Wow.
yeah, we were able to kind of build that, but it took time.
Okay. Well, that's one of the questions I always ask when a content creator has a successful project. I always ask, how long did it take from the initial idea till completion? 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
You're good. You and your team are very good. Very,
Thank
very.
you.
What kept you going?
Well, to be honest, I think the film is a thing. The project is something that kept me up at night. I think I tried not to do the project at times,
Right.
because it felt like these issues were so big, and for a
Yes.
first project, I was like maybe I should do something that's like low stakes, you know. So to be very blunt, like I really tried not to do it, and I think it was one of those things that kept nagging at me for a long time, and then I kind of surrendered to it, and it was a leap of faith to just trust that like I'll be able to handle this. And I think I'm grateful for the community I had to help support me, especially my own family and also my creative team. It was like making this film was a huge challenge. It was the hardest thing I've ever tried to do so far. So
No, you've done, not to try, you've done it.
Thank you.
You're well. Yeah, you didn't try. I saw something that was done. I didn't see a try thing. Okay.
Yeah, it's true.
Absolutely. And, you know, I want to make sure you're speaking the positive. You did it. You did it.
Thank you. I did.
So let's get to some of the complex things that you bring up in this project that you didn't want to do, that you ended up and you finished, by the way.
Yes.
I did not know that basketball was so popular in the Indigenous community.
Mm-hmm.
How Talk to me about this.
Yeah, it's something that I learned in the course of making this. It's interesting because I also feel like Canada is a bit like, you know, in Ontario, we don't know what happens out west.
Yeah.
In Quebec, people don't know what happens on some side. So I think there's also the geography of Canada that makes us not know what happens in different parts of the country.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in talking to Josiah and a lot of folks in the Heltsa community and through the making of the film, speaking to the coaches, it's also understanding that, you know, basketball is a sport that, you know, you only need a ball and you need
Hoop.
a net,
Yeah.
right? So it's not a sport like hockey where you might need more gear to play. And I think that is something that transcends in terms of being able to be more accessible to different communities. I also think that there's a lot of elements within, you know, Black culture that I think, like through hip hop and all these things, that sort of ends up transcending and being able to be accessible to different cultures. And I think, um, I know your question was more so around how widespread basketball is, but I think it's so much bigger than that in some ways, because I think there's so much about Blackness that ends up transcending in different spaces. And basketball, I think, is one of those things. Um, yeah,
Basketball, hip hop,
yeah,
music. Yeah.
yes,
Understood. Yes. Our culture has become part of the world culture.
yeah.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Another thing I want to have you talk about is the whole process of his parents going to Haiti and basically within a few weeks adopting Josiah and his sister. I'm going, wow. Wow. Like, and folks, please see the film wherever you can, because there's so many dichotomies in this movie. But I'm going, like, it was just so interesting seeing some of the film and the footage you had of them back then, and like a young Josiah, and the facial features were the same then as they are now. You can say, yeah, I can see those facial features. Is that a commonplace? Many non-melanated people adopting children from Haiti?
Yeah, I mean, Haiti has a history of international adoption, for better or for worse. I think part of it is that, you know, there's a need there, but I also think that, you know, like like a lot of different sort of the quote unquote third world countries, there is this sort of, the reality that there are a lot of children that need this sort of care, but it can be problematic too, right? Like there's this idea of, like this the white savior complex of having, you know, white folks come in to take kids. There's a history in Haiti of that, you know, within, um, kids getting adopted
Mhm.
or getting trafficked, right?
Right.
This obviously was not the case here with Josiah's story, but I think it's so nuanced. Like I think there's a lot in Josiah's story that's very unique. Also, I think you said, they lived in Haiti for a few years before they decided to adopt. I want to
Okay.
be clear with that. So
Sure.
it wasn't that they went there and they went to adopt. That wasn't even, you know, really their plan. And it just sort of is something that sort of happened in the
Right.
process. Um, but yeah, yeah, there's a lot to be said around just the complications of international adoption.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. And then the fact, like, because I'm watching the film and going, you're putting another layer of things. Okay, parents married for what, 11, 12 years, and then father admitting or sharing with the wife that he's gay, and that caused the breaking up of the relationship. And it seemed, from what I see, Josiah's not completely over that.
I mean, if I don't know if, I feel like anybody who goes through a family separation,
Mm-hmm.
um, Sorry, I think one of my AirPods might be randomly not working. Let me just change.
No problem. Take your time.
All right. All right, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Can you hear us? Okay, continue on.
What was I saying?
No, about the family. I was talking about how the parents were married for 12 years and the father just dropping the news one day that he's gay, and it caused that family to break up. And like Josiah, I'm going to add another layer onto this in just a moment, folks, but that seemed, and I'm looking through, it didn't seem like he's still processing this. It seems like in the journey, he's certainly better than he was, but it hasn't fully got there yet.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak on his behalf, but
Right.
I feel like, I mean, I think from just the human experience of what he shared, I think, it is traumatic to have your parents go through a divorce. I personally, my parents are still together, but it's a complicated. Um, it's always a complicated. See,
Yeah.
families are complicated, right?
Yes, relationships are complicated.
Relationships are
And
complicated.
then you add family relationships. That's even another dichotomy all on top of it. I get you. I feel you.
Exactly. So I think it's something that, we even say it, Liette, Josiah's mom even says it in the film, is that it's like an onion, right? Like I think in this season of his life, it's possible that he's at a certain place with it in terms of his own healing. But I also believe that, and I also think that when he was younger, he was at a different stage.
Right.
And after going through this whole ordeal with the basketball tournament, and even now with the film, like, and I think over time he's going to be in a different place with it too. Like, I think this idea of healing, both whether or not it's from the tournament or whether it's from family dynamics, it's not a linear process,
Right.
and I think, I don't know, I like to believe that what we captured in the film was sort of this a snapshot in his life in
Sure.
terms of where he's at in his journey, and so it's hard to say. Like, I think only time will tell. Like, as far as can I could gather, is that, like, he has a lot of unresolved feelings that he may not have the language to name, but there's a lot of love there on both ends, both
Mhm.
from him and his family and his community. And I think those sort of unresolved parts are things that are just going to be things that he'll have to kind of piece within himself over time.
One of the things I'm glad that you focused on in the film is the relationship with him and his grandfather.
Hmm.
And it seems to be the only solid relationship that he's had in his life. And after his grandfather passes away, he's never been the same. But I love how you focus on that, because I'm very much a manhood and fatherhood advocate, and I strongly believe that every man needs another man in their life, especially an elder in his life. So I really want to say kudos to you on highlighting it, and you don't just do it once during the film; it's throughout the film. So I want to say kudos to you from me and a lot of men for highlighting the importance of that relationship.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think it's such an important thread within the story, but also it's something that sort of naturally came out, was like Josiah's relationship with his papa, is kind of
Papa,
how we
yeah,
called
Papa.
him. And it was such, I mean, it came out through every interview, every
Mhm.
time I spoke to everyone around him, everyone who loved him. Always, that was the number one thing that would always come up, is how, what their bond was. And so to me, it had to be a part of the film, is sort of the spirit of Papa throughout, because I think
Yeah,
that's where he felt like this is where his heart was,
yeah,
right? And I think a lot about, in telling the story, thinking about the grief
the multiple layers of grief that he that is wrapped in his story, not just in the grief of losing his birth parents, but also the grief of losing this elder.
Yeah.
And then also the grief of having parents who are not together. I think there's so many different layers there, but also within the grief, the beautiful moments of love that exist in spite of it,
Yeah.
in spite of how it sort of he manifests it. I think a lot about his guard. How sort of, you see like his sister wanting to hug him. He's like, no, you don't get another one. And it's like, I know that person. I know the guard. I know the armor, right? Like, and I think to me, to tell a story like this, I really wanted to talk about his armor without having to talk about his armor.
Right.
Like you see it, and then you get to see a moment where there's a bit of a crack towards the end where he gets to like, and again, without spoiling the film.
No, but there is a moment I do want to talk about in the film that if I could freeze frame a moment in the film, there was one more, and we'll talk about it at high level, that I thought, I actually, when I was watching, I paused it and I just looked at that shot for a moment, and I thought it was so impactful. But we'll get to it in a minute. We'll get to it in a minute. But yeah, and it just seemed that, there was, throughout his journey, so many things in his world separating, tearing apart. Like you mentioned, his parents in Haiti, his adopted parents, then getting rejected by this basketball tournament. I really, if I ever had the chance to meet him, I'd just say, you are one resilient Black man.
Mm-hmm. He is.
Resiliency to the core, that so many things that, like, he might, if I wanted an expert in avoiding getting through landmines, he may be my guy.
I'll tell him that.
Absolutely. How was dealing with his other siblings, his sister and his two step siblings? How was dealing with them?
It was great. It was great talking to them. I think it's funny because I think the whole family is more or less pretty reserved and and closed off, and so I think everybody was sort of shy in the beginning, but everybody was just really generous with what they shared with us. Taven, Ariane, Mariah, they were all amazing in just being willing to be honest and speak candidly about how they were feeling, and also their own sort of concern about Josiah with everything that he was going through, with the ordeal with the tournament. And so, yeah, they were great to work with.
Before you started the project, were you aware of it? I don't like using the word issue, topics such as the rejection of Josiah by his community, even though he grew up in that community?
Yeah, I mean, all of that was in the news.
True.
The premise of, the tournament, and the fact that his community was behind him, that the specific community that rejected him was the tournament officials.
Right.
And it wasn't, and it's so complicated and layered. Like, we weren't able to tell, like, I think there's multiple films in there in this film.
Yes.
That, like, I think there's a direction in the film that could have just gone all around the tournament, but that wasn't the story that I was interested in telling. But yeah, sorry, I don't know if I answered your question.
No, yeah, just the I guess every community has its concerns and challenges, and the one that you bring up again with him not being considered indigenous, even though he grew up indigenous, it really was an eye-opener to me, because I've been blessed. Just before the pandemic, I spent a week up in Yellowknife, and I want to go up there again because I learned so much. and just seeing another part of culture and heritage, it taught me so much. But I did not realize that those type of challenges exist in those cultures also.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the legacy of colonialism. Like, I think we see that in every community, every single community. I think, when I was thinking about telling the story and also, tackling an issue like the blood quantum rule, which
Yeah.
is, it's a colonial policy that is like, you know, it tells you that you need a percentage of
Yeah.
blood in your body to be counted as a person, as a specific person,
Right.
which really is a way to dictate your resource, your access to resources, right? And I thought about that in parallel with the one drop rule within the
Yeah.
African
You are
American,
reading my
right?
alleged mind. So I was going to bring that
Yeah.
up too. Yeah.
And so to me, those two things are like, they're like cousins of like the colonial
Yeah.
system. And so knowing that and understanding that as a Black woman, and to me, it was like there were so many things about diving into telling the story that felt familiar, even if I wasn't a part of that community. I think a lot about those kinds of connections that exist, especially within Black communities,
Yeah.
that I feel like gives us room for more solidarity across the board. And I think that's kind of what happened in telling the story, is like knowing those realities. To me, it was like, yeah, like this is clearly what this is, but it's also deeply complicated. Like, I think
Yeah.
the experience of navigating the realities of the blood quantum rule and how it can affect communities and their connection to the community and identity struggles. Like, I think that's a very layered experience, and an experience that I will never know as a Black woman what it's like. But I think in trying to tell the story, I try to at least give enough nuance so that I can be truthful to equal parts of him, equal parts of Josiah, both
Yeah.
fully his Black experience, but also fully the Indigenous part of his story. Yeah, it was a tall it was a tall order, but
Yeah.
pushed through.
Yeah. There's so many different directions because this is such a complex movie. But let me go on this one. In filming, were you accepted by the community while you were doing this project? Because obviously Josiah's family was cool with it, but what about the greater community?
Yeah, like when we went up to Bella Bella, their community, the Health Nation, were really welcoming. Pam, Josiah's aunt, who lives up in Bella Bella with Mariah, she explained to the different elders in the community who I was and what my plan was, and they were just really generous with their time in terms of having conversations with them. A lot of interviews I did with folks up in Bella Bella. Some of them didn't end up in the film just because of the way that the story structure was kind of being pulled. Like the way that ended up being, it didn't quite fit. But those conversations helped me understand the story and making sure that I got the story right. And so they were incredibly generous, incredibly open and welcoming of me and the team and the crew that we brought up.
Yeah, Pam's speech near the end, powerful. Powerful, very powerful, and so from the heart. So a moving moment in the film for me. Really, really, really moving. Geez, as I said, there's so many different things going on. Okay, let me ask, when you finished the project, what was your feeling? And then when you saw the final cut, the final finished piece, what were both of those feelings?
I mean, it was a marathon. It was a marathon to do this film. I think there were different moments of exhale, I guess. I think the first moment of exhale was showing the family the film.
Mm,
Um,
what
I
was
think
that like?
I think yeah, I feel like more than just my own experience of seeing the cut, like I knew what I cared for and I knew what my intention was, but I think I cared more about how they would feel watching their story back. And so I think that first moment when they got to see it was just like the first moment where I felt like I could actually just like like exhale a little bit,
Sure.
because they watched it and they were moved by the film. Everybody cried. There's a lot of we got on a call, on a Zoom call, and for like 3 hours, and it was just
Oh my
us
goodness.
talking about,
Wow.
yeah, us talking about how
Beautiful.
we felt, and I think in a beautiful way. And I feel so honored to have been able to do that. Is I think in a way, by making this film, I was able to kind of put them in conversation with each other in a way that they hadn't, because speaking about these things, and Josiah is closed off. They were able to kind of see parts of his life that they didn't really know, and yeah, like I think he ended up opening up with me and through the film in a way that he isn't he isn't always that open with his loved ones too. So so that to me was the most important audience to me, was them, and
Sure.
them being able to see that. And so that first release, that first exhale of came from them feeling great about the story, seeing that they could see their papa through the film, and the spirit of who he was and his love and his community, their community, seeing all of that be communicated accurately on screen, was everything, was absolutely everything to me. And so everything else that's happened has just been like gravy.
Yeah.
It's been gravy, but yeah.
All these awards, and congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So as we start winding down the conversation here, I will bring up again the right at the end ceremony, the ceremony's happening, and Josiah is standing there, and you see a tear coming down his eye, moving. Again, I stopped the film at that point, and kudos to you and your team getting that shot.
Thank you. That's Iris, our cinematographer.
Magical moment, like so powerful. That final ceremony, so powerful.
Yeah.
Really, really moved me. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. You've done this film, you and your team. How has it changed you at all, if it has?
It's an interesting question. I mean, it's changed me a lot. Like, I think, um, for me to tell a story about healing, I didn't want to ask a question of Josiah and not be willing to ask myself those same questions. And so through the process of making the film, I had to dig deeper within myself and my own connection with my own family, because I think I was curious about how I wanted to understand him. And so to me, in order to do that, I had to dig deep within myself to understand myself and why and what, and to kind of be able to place where he might be feeling.
Right.
And so in doing that work, outside of making the film, that transformed my own healing, and so I think, and I don't know what other people's processes are in making films, but I think for me, I'm interested in sort of, yeah, like I like the idea of being able to, whatever I put people in front of my camera through, I want to be able to say that I could do that too. And so in a way that their own bravery challenged me to be brave in my own life, and to also, take inventory of the stuff I have in my life, the community that I have, the traditions we have access to process things, you know. I think there's so much there that I learned from them. And also just, yeah, the resilience that sort of echoes across the board, was just something to marvel at and something to just honor. And I hope that, again, through the film, like my hope is that I honored that. And but in terms of how it shaped me, I think it's something that is never going to leave me, because it's, I mean, yeah, yeah, I don't know how else to say it, but it's
That's
just, it
fine.
changed both. So
No, that's fine. What has Josiah said about the film, if anything?
yeah, he's been a bit blown away, because I think throughout the process he never thought that a story about basketball would be a big deal. A story of him being kicked out of the tournament would be a big deal, which is why he was always kind of a bit dismissive in the beginning of like, why do you care? What, no one's going to care about this story. I just some kid in Calgary who just, who likes to play ball and now doesn't quite play basketball, but like a thing happened a couple of years ago. Like, I think to him that's kind of what it was, but to me, I knew that there were things there that were powerful and bigger. And so I think the response from people and the awards and people speaking about his story in those ways, like, I think has really opened up his eyes to his own life in a lot of ways. Like, I think it's something that he's still kind of shocked at every time. And so I'm grateful that he gets to experience that, because I
Yeah.
think it's almost like it's the proof of what I kept telling him. And so it's yeah, it's been really great.
Well, when you speak with him next, tell him this from me. I believe in him.
I'll pass that on for sure.
I believe in him. He was born to win. He was born to win. I think incredible individual. And hopefully we'll get him if and when he's ready. I'd love to get him on this platform, because he's a living Black warrior.
Yes, absolutely.
Very, very much so. What is next for the film?
We're currently playing at the Regent Park Film Festival in Toronto. It's a virtual festival, so it's accessible to anyone in Canada, and you just have the internet. You can kind of watch it through the festival there. It's on from today all the way up until December 2nd.
There's DJ Renard saying, what an amazing story.
Oh, wow, thank you. Yeah, so it's available through the Regent Park Film Festival. And we're also airing on the CBC documentary channel.
Yes.
Which is really exciting. And
congratulations, another big win.
Thank you. Yeah, it's super exciting. And I believe in January we'll be accessible on CBC Gem online.
Nice.
We don't quite know our dates yet, but
you'll
for
keep
now,
us updated though.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. What's next for you?
Well, I'm working on a few other projects. And I'm also trying to find windows here and there to like sleep and rest because it's very tiring.
Yes.
It's very tiring.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm working on a short documentary. It's an animated short documentary actually. And I'm super excited about that. And then I'm currently part of the TIFF Netflix Accelerator Fellow. So I'm developing a screenplay and I'm gonna be taking part of the TIFF Writer Studio in 2022.
You don't sleep.
I'm busy.
You do not sleep.
Yeah.
Which leads to this question: what do you do to relax?
I listen to music and I try to go on walks and I watch movies. So it's play and it's work. But so music is a big one.
Okay, give me two or three of your favorite artists that you love listening to.
2 or 3?
Yeah.
I mean,
Notice I didn't say your favorite. I said any 2 or 3 you like listening to.
oh gosh, I feel like I have to pull up my phone. I mean, lately it's been a lot of like Luther Vandross for some reason, and like
What?
Adele.
What? Okay.
And Dinah Washington. I would listen to some jazz, and so it's a mix. It's a mix of
Okay.
things.
Especially with Dinah Washington, big,
Yes,
amazing vocalists.
absolutely amazing. Yeah.
Well, look, Yasmine, it has been an absolute joy and pleasure sharing with you over the last few minutes. Thank you so much for what you have done, what you are doing, and what you will be doing.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed our chat. This was really great.
At any time the mic is open, I'm expecting you to come back when you have your next project ready, so we can share it with the world. For people who want to find out more about the One of Ours documentary, go to oneofoursdoc.com. If you want to find out what keeps this lady awake, Yasmine, and that's with an E at the end, Mathurin.com.
Yeah.
To all her projects. Any words you'd like to give to the content creators out there?
Yeah. Get off the internet. Get off the internet and just like silence the noise of that and find silence to actually anchor yourself in your own intuition and your own voice. Because I think the internet is very noisy to the creative process. So yeah, that's my advice.
You know, it's interesting. Whenever I'm not on social media a lot, and especially when I'm not, I get so much positive, productive work done.
Yeah, it's a balance. It's a balance because I think sometimes I think the internet can help feed the creative process, but I also think it can kind of stifle it because there's so much. There's so much.
And yeah, I can't wait to see the documentary. Another
That's
one.
great. Thank you,
Yeah,
Sheraton.
Sheraton. Yeah, big time. So we are gonna let you go, get some of that rest that you say you don't get enough of.
Yeah.
We look forward to having you back. If we don't see you or hear from you before the end of the year, have a great, blessed, and safe holiday season.
Thank you so much. Yeah, you too. All the best.
Thank you. So we are gonna let her go get some rest. That was another epic conversation. And you know what? I love bringing new friends to the Dr. Vibe Show, the home of epic conversations. And make sure you go see that film. Please. If you don't know how to see it, I'll put it up here again. There's the link. oneofoursdoc.com. No excuses. Go there and find out. I'll be checking you. No, I'm not going to track you. Don't worry. It's all good. So it's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations 2020 Best Podcast News Award winner, 2018 Innovation Award winner given out the Canadian Ethnic Media Association, and I host the only online conversation in the world for dads and fathers that is sponsored by Dove Men Care and Dads Central. I'd like to thank everyone who watched this or listened to this live on the replay. It's appreciated and not taken for granted. As always, I close out with this. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get small to get stronger. Block assumptions, then aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Love, faith, and respect. And remember to give yourselves grace. And we'll see you soon. Thanks again for watching. Bye-bye.